Hello and welcome to the Birchal Podcast. My name is Emily, I'm your host, and today I'm joined by David and Kirsty from Stryda, which is one of Australia's newest, most exciting beer brands. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Emily. Thanks for having us.
So let's start from the basics. Where did the idea for Stryda come from?
What's Stryda? Yeah, we were amazed with the success of a lot of international companies in this country, and we looked around and we said, well, there's no huge Australian brands on the global stage, so we wanted to put an Australian brand on the global stage and really do this country proud. So to do that, we needed a fantastic team, fantastic product, really strong brand, and a fantastic, very powerful brand ambassador. Really, the idea for Stryda is to inspire and create community and ultimately legacy.
Great. So obviously a lot of work has gone into what's in these bottles.
Yeah.
What makes it so different from other beers?
A tremendous amount of work has went into the liquid itself, and we've got one of the most reputable brewers in the country working on the product. It's preservative-free, our beers, very high-quality ingredients, very, very sessionable. And, from mass market testing and market reviews, the feedback we're getting is non-bloating and very easy to drink.
Great.
Yes.
And obviously there's a lot of people who are drinking less, or, there's this sober curious movement.
Yeah.
I hate this terminology, but it's all the rage at the moment. How are you addressing that market?
Well, obviously, like we encourage responsible drinking around Stryda, and Stryda's more like focused on what it bringing community together around our experiences, our products, our team. We do have a low alcohol version, a 2.2, which is low calorie, low alcohol, and it's kind of designed to really tick that beer experience, where some of the non-alc beers out there don't. But still encourage responsible drinking, and there's going to be other products in the pipeline that will be coming out with Stryda as well, which you'll see in due course, which will appeal to everybody.
Absolutely. So when you talk about brand, this is probably a question for you, Kirsty. How do you go about considering a marketing strategy that is going to, really capture the essence of the brand and make it an aspirational, exciting brand experience?
Yeah, so for me, it's about being really disruptive. And I've done this with multiple other brands before, but I think what really excited me about Stryda is creating a very contemporary, modern, edgy brand. And I think Nick really helps to bring that to life because he is quite raw.
Nick who?
Nick Kyrgios.
Oh.
Very exciting.
The bad boy of tennis.
Yeah, exactly. So it's about bringing something really authentic from a brand point of view, but delivering it in a kind of edgy, cool, modern way for the younger generation, which have been consistently walking away from beer, essentially, and moving into like RTDs and seltzers and things like that. So we just saw a massive gap in the market to create a brand that is quite bold and edgy and cool.
So what have been the trends that you've seen in the market over the last 5 to 10 years, and why is beer declining in that industry?
Yeah, so beer still is the largest segment across any alcohol, but what we have seen is over the last decade, people are drinking less, just generally they're drinking less alcohol, but they're also drinking less beer. So if you go 10 years ago, beer was 75% of the volume. Now it's 39%.
What?
And I think what's happened is all these new brands have come in, all these new segments have come in. Like 10 years ago, seltzers didn't exist.
Yeah.
And now you've got all these, cocktails in a can, and then you've got RTDs. So it's a very proliferated market. But what we're finding is that people are just wanting to go back to what they know. But then when they try to go back to beer, they're seeing these like really mainstream beers that have been around for a long time, but probably aren't really connecting with them.
Right. And so how have you gone about creating a marketing strategy that does connect with your target audience?
Oh, I think a couple of things. So experiences is really key for Stryda. So it's not just about creating amazing packaging and a brand that looks good and tastes good. It's about giving people that amazing experience. So we really started off with, festivals. So we were the main beer sponsor of Ultra Music Festival, which had 25,000 people in Melbourne and then in Queensland as well. So that was a great way to launch the brand and see a lot of people just enjoying beer again. So that was one thing. I think the other thing is to really connect people with a story and like being a little bit, I guess, unforgiving and like we are who we are. We are underdogs and we're going to play that way and we're going to talk from the heart but just do it in a slightly different way. But I think for me, it's all about experiences and getting people, and that's why one of the biggest strategies of Stryda is purchasing real estate assets and actually buying venues and buying tap rooms so we can bring people in and give them that authentic Stryda experience, which is a little bit different to what you will see from most other beer brands.
Absolutely. So going from that, where have you started in terms of purchasing real estate and where do you see that going?
Yeah, so the first property that we've purchased outright in Stryda is in Wagga Wagga. It's an established brewery called the Thirsty Crow. So we take ownership of that on the 2nd of December. Also in the works, we have a kind of VIP Stryda experience destination venue in the works up at Glenorchy, up in northwest Sydney. And the view is to just grow that out and extrapolate that so that we are purchasing venues across Australia and worldwide in the next short, mid and long term. We just keep on growing, we keep expanding. And as Kirsty said, by purchasing our own venues, not only do we underpin the brand and give great returns and security for investors in Stryda, we also have kind of control over the experiences that we can create in those venues, So
you rebranding the venues?
Yeah, we will be. We will be. The venues will probably come under the House of Stryda.
Awesome.
And it'll be a kind of real Stryda experience, but only when we feel that, the venue can offer the type of Stryda experience that we think is of a standard befitting of the brand.
So what is the Stryda experience?
The Stryda, like it's, and again, going back to what Kirsty was saying, but it's a real, as I say, it's more than just a beer. It's about an emotional connection to the brand. Like Stryda is about, how it makes you feel, when you look at the brand, when you see the logo, when you hear the name, when you pick up one of our products, and when you're in one of our venues, when you're at one of our events, it's a very multifaceted experience. We really want to drive community. We want you to feel part of something. We want you to feel proud of something. When you're supporting the brand, whatever your level of involvement, from somebody who's just drinking the beers to somebody who's invested in and somebody's part of the Strydan community. That's what we're trying to generate. We're really trying to
Strydan, become a Strydan.
Yeah, become a Strydan, join and join the movement.
So obviously your biggest brand ambassador is Nick Kyrgios.
Yeah.
Why Nick Kyrgios?
Well, Nick's actually, a major owner of this brand as well as a brand ambassador. So Nick is just perfect. I mean, he's got personal connections to one of our other owners. But, more than that, Nick, for us, and I think globally is an inspiration. He's a real voice of truth. He really uses his platform for good. And I think anybody who says anything to the contrary probably doesn't know him very well. He's perfect for us in terms of expanding an Australian brand globally as well. Mm-hmm. Because he's got a huge international following, huge international appeal. And I think that, some of the media and things around him, it's very, very unfair and unjust. And he's perfect fit for what we're about, which is not scared to speak his mind. And as I say, a voice of truth and a platform for good.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's a really good point. It's that you love him or you hate him. And I think that that's such a hard thing for people to swallow, is that, you know, you're looking at the external, I guess, the facade of what an international celebrity is. You don't know them personally, but then obviously you've taken the leap to take on somebody controversial and, you know, put them forward as the face of your brand. And I think that that's a testament to your brand in and of itself, is that you're willing to take the risks and say, we stand by this, and that's what we stand for.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, as Kirsty said, we're unapologetically bold, raw, edgy, cool, trying to, some as amazing established brands in this country that everybody knows, and there's still the top 10 brands in this category are fairly consistent, and there's a reason for that. But we went into this project eyes wide open, and we fully understand the magnitude of the project. And Nick coming on board, he's the perfect person to spearhead our campaign, both domestically and globally. And he's raw, edgy, cool, but more importantly for us, he really fits. I mean, the amount of community work that he does and everything like that. As I said, he's perfect, because Stryda's, we're really building community. We're really focusing in community. We're really driving a lot of community events. And he's a perfect fit for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So to date, what have been your key milestones of success?
I'll start, and then you can add. I think for me, it's a couple of things. I think number one, a lot of work was done on the branding and getting it right and looking different to anything else out there.
Yeah, right.
But still being accessible. So there was a lot of work done on obviously product development, but then also like the pricing strategy. So making sure that we're not priced at that premium level. We're providing a really premium product, but at an affordable price, because in today's world, we need to be affordable. So I think that's number one for me. And I think number two is really establishing a really strong strategy. What really appeals to me is the fact that it's completely underpinned by real estate assets. I'm a real estate girl. I love investing. And so for me, it was a big deal, because it gives you multiple revenue streams, number one.
Yep.
But number two, it gives you that ability to bring experiences to life for consumers. And then, it's like the way I see it is, what we purchased with Wagga Wagga is the start. And then we're going to be building a VIP Glenora tap room, a brewery and distillery. So that's really exciting. So that, again, is bringing people in for that Stryda experience, but then also being able to go into whiskey and other spirits. So it's just
exciting.
so for me, like, that's a lot of work, like just going into the strategy, but then quickly going in, acquiring or becoming like VIP sponsors of major events, and then having Nick come on board. So it was this kind of perfect storm of like, we're making really good progress. And then what we're now seeing is retailers are coming on board.
Right.
We're now available on Dan's online, which is fantastic. We've got a lot of independent retailers that are supporting us in venues. So it started off strong, and we're getting there. So I think that's super exciting.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm sure you're aware of the fact that a lot of microbreweries and craft breweries have closed over the last few years. Birchal in particular, we're super aware, because we've done raises for a lot of those companies, and it's so disappointing and heartbreaking to see it happen. Does that scare you?
No, not at all. I think our go-to-market strategy is, and our company's strategy is very different. We obviously, where we see the pressures in the market, we see the pressures in the retail space, we see the rising costs, we feel all of that, and that's why it became very clear early on that we needed to take a multifaceted approach to it, where we underpinned our company, underpinned our brand, and went to market differently. And I think, like a lot of, as I said, there's some amazing breweries in this country, there's some amazing products, and great people. But, you know, the kind of market sentiment often is to, you know, complain about the big guys and how kind of, you know, how they are really driving their anti-competitive behavior, really kind of puts more pressure on the little guys. But we take a kind of different angle where, you know, the big guys, they're doing great business, and you know, they do what they do because they can do what they do, and they can do what they do because what they're doing works. So rather than complain about it, you know, why don't we try and rise up as a company and you know, take them on in that sense? But you know, by our strategy is, you know, although it's an emerging brand, it's a big boy strategy, and that's what we're taking to market. So now we feel the pressures. We feel you know, there's some awful stories. A lot of people have poured their heart and soul into things, and you know, sorry to see them go. But we're going to make sure that we're not one of those. So no, it doesn't worry me.
What kind of key inspiration points have you taken from the larger brands that you instill into your brand strategy?
Consistency, you know, the marketing as well. But the main thing is consistency, and they drive, you know, there's an emotional connection to a lot of the big brands as well. A lot of them are historic and entrenched as a result in Australian culture. You know, a lot of people just, you know, wouldn't look past or consider other products, you know, which makes it harder to kind of break into the space. But yeah, as I say, I find it quite, you know, we've got a lot of respect for them, for the big guys, because as I say, what they are doing works and has worked for a very long time, you know.
Sure. So if you look at a beer like VB, iconic, everybody knows it. They've brought out a cologne. There's VB rings, there's VB merch, there's everything. I know the shock in your eyes, and I'm equally as disgusted. But you know, you look at something like that and you could say, hey, you know, Australia does have an iconic beer. It's VB, or somebody might say we've got Melbourne bitter as well. Sorry, I know your Sydney ciders. No insult meant. But how do you take on that kind of, I guess, prolific and iconic brand?
Yeah, I mean, I guess in a couple of ways. I don't think it's like we're taking on that. We're being authentically us. And I don't think we ever want to look at them and say, take away from what they've done, but we're just really laser focused on our own direction and our own path and how we're going to take it. So doing things differently, creating, I guess, what do you call it? A movement and having people come with us, because whilst there are a lot of iconic Australian brands in Australia, if you go outside of Australia, you go to America, you go to London, for instance, you might see Foster's.
I remember this when I went to America for the first time, and I was like, you never drink this at home.
Yeah. And so no Aussie brand apart from Foster's has broken through into the international market. If you think about in Australia, people drink Peroni, people drink Mexican beers, but you don't go to Mexico and see an Australian beer.
Yeah.
So we see that as a bigger opportunity than really taking on these long-lasting big Aussie beer brands. It's like, well, we're going to do things differently. We've got Nick, we've got an international powerhouse behind us.
Yeah.
Let's take on the international market and put Aussie beer on the global map.
So which is the first market that you want to attack? Is it Asia, Europe, America?
Well, actually, you know, we do have a strategy around that, but, you know, we're having to kind of be reactive because, you know, since we've, in the last few weeks in particular, we're getting a lot of international interest, and a lot of companies and distribution companies from those markets have reached out. So the US is definitely going to be a big point of focus for us, but we're getting a lot of interest in the Southeast Asian market. And the Indian market, as well as the UK. So just watch the space internationally. Yeah.
So obviously you're raising capital now to scale and scale quickly.
Yeah.
And you did mention that community is a really big part of your brand. Is that why you've gone down the equity crowdfunding route versus, you know, venture capital or getting a debt funding?
No, so we've kept Stryda very tight, you know, in terms of investors and capital, equity holders. But, what really appeals to us around this route is, you look at companies like Brewdog who have done it very, very well. So with the capital, it's always handy, it's always great, and that'll allow us to, it'll expedite our acquisition of further venues and our growth. But one of the major draws to me about the crowdsourced route is the growth acceleration that comes from that.
Absolutely.
If we can attract 1, 2, 3,000 investors into our brand, people who are buying in to what we're about, that's very attractive to us, and that's what we're about. As I said, we're trying to create a striding community. So, what better way than opening the doors to having thousands of shareholders?
Because they're not just shareholders; they become your ambassadors. They're the ones who go to the bottle-o and say, "Oh, I've invested in this beer. I'm a part owner. I'm going to get this," and they're going to have it at their next party. And they're going to go to a bar and going to say, "Oh, I've invested in that. I'll get that." Those are the kinds of people who spread the word for your brand, because the more successful it is, the better their returns are potentially in the future. So it makes a hell of a lot of sense. And I think a lot of people forget that. Like, you've got a huge ambassador, but it's the little ones as well that make a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And those investors, those ambassadors, driving it in every community that they're involved with is going to be massive for us. And I think that, it's just going to, as I say, serve as a huge growth accelerator. So as well as the capital, that's, a massive appeal to us to go down this path.
So in terms of looking forward into the future for Stryda, obviously a big part of your strategy is real estate, and then the other is growing the brand and getting into, more retailers, getting into bars, et cetera, et cetera. What's your key focus? Is it hard to keep to one?
Well, we kind of joke about all the time in the office. I think we've got some very big plays happening. A lot of big plates spinning in the air around the venues. Our sales strategy. Obviously, the Nick media and marketing drive. So now, to answer your question, they're all of focus, and different elements of the team are focusing on all aspects simultaneously.
Right. Does that get overwhelming? Because I can imagine, and even when I think about it in my head, I look at that and I say there's so many different facets to what you've got to appeal to when you're a really young brand, and that can be really, really difficult. How do you ensure that you're not losing sight of your end goal?
I think it comes down to an amazing support team. We've got some very, very talented people working with us. We've got a social media arm to the business, which literally they just solely focus on our social media.
So good.
We have an amazing PR team. We have an amazing sales team as well. So we've got multiple feet on the ground now. So I think everyone's pretty laser focused on what they need to achieve in their roles. So it allows us to be able to compartmentalize, even though there is a lot going on from a top line vision. There's certain people focusing on just certain elements of the business to make sure it runs well. But we're so blessed. We've got the most amazing team of brewers, experts, legal counsel, financial counsel, and you'll see that when you go on to our page and meet the team.
Yeah,
very, very experienced, very talented people. So we're so blessed to have that.
And we like it too. We like the tempo that we're running at, Emily. To be honest, that's how we are. It took, one of the proudest things for me is as Kirsty saying, the team we have. I look around the room and genuinely feel blessed at times. Just the quality that we have among our ranks is phenomenal.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how we can cope with it, and just everybody's aligned with the tempo as well, and the pace that we're running at. So we like it.
Yeah, because it feels like it's going so fast, and that's kind of key, I think, to a lot of early stage startups is you don't have time to mess around. You've got to scale fast, but you also fail fast a lot of the time. Like, what have been the biggest, I want to say failures, but then I kind of want to say mistakes that you've learned from since beginning the brand?
I think like it takes a long time to find your connections and find your people in this industry. And, you know, in terms of mistakes, you know, it's hard to say. We've just been very, as Kirsty said earlier, we've been very focused on just like, you know, where we're going. And like, you know, I don't feel we've made any big mistakes at the minute. We're just kind of, you know, you're obviously learning. You're learning, you know, how to kind of approach, you know, things like range reviews. You're learning, you know, suppliers and you know, how to streamline logistics and things like that. Right. But you know, it's just a lot of learning rather than mistakes. So today,
and I think you hit the nail on the head. It's just a lot of streamlining.
Yeah.
You know, when you get it, you go, oh, that's right. We've learned to be a little bit more nimble here or cut costs there, but not really cut costs, but, you know, be more efficient, I guess is the right word.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember working with another beer brand for another Birchal raise, and their biggest mistake was the first batch of beer that they put out that went into bottle shops was tainted, and they had to recall every single one of them, and they were thinking, how do we financially recover from this? And they had to take a big break in between releasing the second batch and, you know, regain that trust. But it just meant that they improved their operations so much because they said, we cannot afford to do this again. And it's those mistakes, I think, that you make in the early stages that really shape the future of the business going forward. And it's funny, like I think a lot of people, when I talk to them on the podcast, they don't want to admit that there was a mistake or anything like that, but you learn and grow from it so much as a business, I think.
Yeah, and I think our first batch of beer, we did it more at a microbrewery level. But then we quickly, because of just the scale we want to go, and we want to go mainstream, so we're definitely not in craft beer. And it was just, you know, getting that level of production up, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it's just, as I say, it's all about learnings, you know, in this industry. So yeah, we, as I say, we don't really dwell on you know, minor errors or, you know, as I say, we're all channeling towards the same kind of goals. So we're learning every day, growing every day.
So with the funds that you're raising now, obviously you'll need to raise a significant amount more to acquire more real estate assets. What's the immediate future look like for Stryda?
We're very focused on making the business element work, you know, making this a profitable company very quickly. Obviously, it's taken a huge amount of investment to get us to where we are now. But moving forward, you know, as Kirsty said earlier, short term with the multiple revenue streams, I mean, you know, merchandise is going to be huge for us. On-premise, off-premise, wholesale. We've also got our own venue revenue income streams as well. You know, there's going to be, you know, not short term, but mid to long term, is going to be massive capital growth across our portfolio as well. So that's how the short term future looks. You know, in the next 2 to 3 months, as we get, you know, we move into our Wagga venue, we get that trading. You know, we start construction of Glenora early next year. We have a huge media push, and we're just trying to onboard as many distributors as possible, and distributors that are aligned with what we are. And a good fit for us.
So for somebody who wants to start a new business, and whether it be a brewery or a new brand or anything, what advice would you give them from point A to get to point B?
I think initially start with some really strong market research. You've really got to understand where the gaps are in the market. We definitely saw a huge opportunity to really bring in the younger generation back into beer.
Yeah, right.
And that's why, you know, we're doing what we're doing with like the branding and the events and Become a Strydan and giving back to people as well, giving them some really cool prizes and awesome merchandise. Kind of feels a little bit Culture Kings to me, what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
So I think do your research, spend more time researching than actually doing, get your strategy right, and really pick your strategy apart and make sure you know exactly where you're going. And then it's literally one step in front of the next. It's like, all right, we need a team. So you go out there and you find experts in that field. And then the next step is, okay, well, now we need to create a product. How are we going to do that? Again, you talk to people, you research, you create some products. Like, I mean, honestly, we went through so many reiterations of before we even got to this. So, and then just, have your big goal, but it's like, what are the micro goals in between? What's your step 1, step 2, step 3?
Listening to people start businesses, I just think to myself, you've got to be a certain level of crazy to get into this. It is so much work.
Yeah.
And I think the possibility of failure, you just can't even have in your mind, because if it fails, you've just put so much time and effort and blood, sweat and tears into it that it's just, it's unfathomable to think that it can't work. How do you keep yourselves motivated every day to keep going?
Like, you need to believe in what you're doing, and we're oozing in belief. As Kirsty said there, the end goal for us is to really create a legacy brand, and to do that is no easy undertaking. Just again, one step in front of the other. It takes time to build everything. So does that kind of, as long as you have patience. That's one thing that this game has really taught me, a lot of patience. And just keep going, don't stop, believe in what you're doing. There's definitely days where, it's very capital intense as well to kind of get to where we are trying to go. But never stop. Obviously, our kind of saying is, we've burned the boats. There is no going back. If when sinking's not an option, you swim, as you're touching on there. So believe in what you're doing and keep going.
Yeah. As David said, failure is not an option.
Yeah.
We won't fail.
No. But you have to be intelligent about how you structure your strategy. A lot of people say, it's risky and big risk that you guys are taking, but we don't see it like that, because as I say, we're underpinning our strategy with a real estate arm, and there's just quality of team, quality of product, accessible price point, amazing owner and ambassador Nick. We see it's a massive opportunity rather than a massive risk, so let's take it.
Absolutely. I think it's really inspiring to see how much belief you have in the company and its future moving forward, and I'm sure that investors will feel exactly the same, and hopefully they'll get to crack a cold one open with you soon. I know I will be. But thank you so much for your time and for coming on and having a chat with me today. I'm sure everyone will be reaching out to you. This is a really exciting opportunity and I really appreciate it.
No, thank you, Emily.
Thank you,
and thanks everybody at Birchal.